Welcome to the More Than OK podcast, a wellbeing and family podcast about tips, strategies and stories on how to be more than okay. I'm Belinda Bray. I am a wife, a mum and a teacher, and I love learning about wellbeing, and I love taking what I've learnt into my everyday life, into my family and into my classroom. And I'm excited to bring you along the journey so you can be more than okay. Welcome to another episode of More Than Okay. Today we have a special guest, Clare Whyte, who's here from DBT Skills for Change. She's also a parent from our college. So we're really thrilled to have you here today.
Thanks, Belinda.
So do you want to just quickly tell us what DBT is?
Yeah, sure. So it stands for Dialectical Behaviour Therapy, and it's in its entirety, it's a model of therapy that it gives a really broad range of support for a client. It's quite a big therapy in itself. We just look at the skills training. So just the skills in emotion regulation, in distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness and mindfulness. And that's really this solid skill, tangible skills that can give people a really good foundation for coping.
Great. You're a psychologist, right?
I'm not a psychologist.
You're not a psychologist?
No.
What do we call you?
I have a psychology training, but
Yeah.
I have a bachelor in psychology and honours in psychology, and have ongoing training ahead of me. But I have some really specific training in DBT.
That's so great.
So that's my background in terms of that.
Yeah, and it just sounds so great. I love the idea of skilling people and helping them through things rather than always digging back.
Yeah.
Am I interpreting that the right way?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I guess when people have the skillful foundation, they have a good base to go back and do that work if they need to. But sometimes the skills are enough. Sometimes we just need some ways that we can get through what we've got going on in our lives, because life has all those ups and downs, and so if we've got some skills that we can use when those downs come, just to be able to cope and to be able to get through, and we can build these things into our life so that I guess those things knock us around a little bit less.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love that. All right, the 3 topics we're going to cover today. It's big. I'm feeling as if it's really lots of content to get through.
It is big, but we'll just do a tinsy bit of each one, because if you wanted to learn it all, it's like 20 to 30 weeks.
I know.
Or you do like a whole year of skills training.
Yeah.
So we're just going to hit you with some little techniques and stuff.
Okay, so we're going to look at distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and validation. They're the 3 big ones that you've passed on to me that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Yes? Here we go. We ready?
Okay, fire away.
I'm really excited about this. I think this is really important stuff. And I think it's important for us, parents, but I think it's really important for our kids. And we both have teens, and watching them do the ups and downs, they really need these skills.
Yeah,
so I'm really excited.
A good point too around teenagers too. I mean, all our parents of all our age kids kind of probably find it really helpful, but in adolescence we kind of see some of those, I guess, dysregulations peak as well. So if we've got some skills to help our teens to bring it back down, I think about our grade 12ers and all those external pressures, and if we can give them some things to kind of ride those waves.
Yeah, great. Okay, number 1 is distress tolerance. Can you, in your amazing knowledge, tell us what that is?
Okay, so distress tolerance skills in DBT are really about giving us a set of skills that can help us to tolerate big, painful emotions or difficult situations that come up for us. And we can do that in a couple of ways. We can do it by surviving the crisis, which might mean we're just getting through. We're just getting through and we just want to make it through without making it any worse or making a poor decision that kind of compounds the situation. Yeah. Or it can be radical acceptance as well. And I really love radical acceptance because it really aligns well with my faith as well. So there's those two components that sit under distress tolerance.
Yeah, okay.
And so the distress tolerance skill I thought I'd share today, because when we are in distress, we have a lot going on physiologically in our body. So our body's responding to our situation or the emotion that we've felt in response to something. And so a lot goes on in our body. So everyone's probably felt that kind of tightness in your throat when you're really anxious, or the knot in your tummy, or clenching of your fists when you're feeling just really overwhelmed or angry. We don't go, I'm going to have, a knot in my tummy right now. These things just happen automatically when we experience an emotion. So when we have a skill we can use to calm our body, it can really help us to cope with that situation. And it might even help us to then change the emotion that we're feeling.
Okay, cool.
So
I have told Claire that I was feeling a bit anxious about filming today, and she was like, "Ooh, I have a thing for you." So she's going to show us.
So I thought I'd come with props today, and I bought an ice pack. So I don't know if you're willing to have a go, Belinda.
I'll do anything.
But I can demo it for you. Won't put you that much on the spot. So when we have really intense emotion going through our body, we have our heart rate will be going faster. We will have higher blood pressure. We will have lots of things going on in our body. And as humans, we actually have what's called a mammalian dive reflex.
Right.
So if you were to fall into a freezing cold lake, your body would go, I need to conserve all the energy that I need to. Or if you dive into a cold pool, your body starts to go into a conservation mode. So what we can do is we can actually help our body to reduce all that escalation that's happening in our body by kind of hijacking it with an ice pack.
Okay.
So what we can do, this is a great one for kids too. So you might just need like a little puppy dog ice pack, or, the cute little ones, and, it can probably range from your little preppies who might be melting down right through. The ice pack, you want to put it across your forehead or your face, just a little bit like that. And invert your head, so leaning down over your knees. And holding your breath for whatever's comfortable, but aiming for about 30 seconds.
Wow.
And when you do that, your body will bring down your blood pressure. It will decrease your heart rate, and a few other things going on in our body as well.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So we could use that if we have a toddler melting down, or if we've got perhaps a Year 12 student who's, I have a Year 12 student, who's really finding it hard to regulate. This is the sort of thing we can do. Yeah. So in particular, when we are in, I guess, a crisis, so like when nothing else is working, because we don't want to use it all the time, but when we've kind of got that sense that, if I don't do this, I'm going to do things that aren't really effective for me. So it can be a really good. So this is for distress, not stress.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good distinction, Belinda. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some other practical tips for distress tolerance.
Yeah, so breathing is a big one. We probably all hear a lot about breathing and mindfulness, and it can seem a little bit maybe vague, a little bit fluffy, and a little bit hard to really get a handle on. But when we use our breath, we can do the same thing with the ice pack. This is really dramatic and really quick, but we can actually change our physiological response with our breath. There are quite a few different techniques. There's the box breath, which a lot of people will have heard about. A lot of kids know the hand breath, so breathing in with the up, down, with breathing out, like that. When we're really talking about regulating ourselves, if we're kind of, heading into panic or just really distressed or stressed, we can use just even a short in-breath and a long out-breath.
Yes.
So you will hear many a time in my house, short in-breath, long out-breath, short in-breath, long out-breath.
That's great.
Because it's just a really quick way we can kind of bring ourselves back to a place where we can, have a conversation that's tricky, or express ourselves that this is what's going on and this is what's hard, and just being able to bring that little bit of regulation. So there are lots of different numbers people throw around, but if you do like a 4-second in-breath, hold your breath, and then out for 7 or 8 seconds, or kind of as long as you can make it.
I do this with my classes.
Yeah,
Like
awesome.
sometimes you'll get a class that's just done PE, or just been given cupcakes or, and they come in and they're really, and it's hard to keep a lid on it. I sometimes do these breathing exercises and the whole hold your breath and then let it out slowly. And you can just see that the class kind of just calms and you can actually talk to them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
And not only are they regulating, but they're actually also learning a strategy to take into other classes or exams or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and if you've got a little tiny person, the one I like is blowing up a balloon. Imagine you are blowing up a balloon, so that long out breath. You've got to get that balloon bigger.
Okay.
And pretend to blow up a balloon.
Okay.
So just kind of modifying it a little bit if we've got our little preppies through to...
Okay. I sometimes do like a tense and release thing too. Is that another technique?
That is. So the skills that I'm talking about actually are, so this is it's actually called the tip skill. Okay. So there's actually heaps of distress tolerance skills. So that the ones that we're kind of talking about here are tip. So tip is tipping with temperature. We can also regulate big emotions, particularly anger, fear, ones that really activate us to need to do something. We can regulate them with intense exercise.
Okay.
We've got the pace breathing, which is that that short ins, long out.
Yeah.
And then we've got the paired muscle relaxation. So you are right on it, Belinda.
Right on it, yay.
And that tense and release. So you can go through and tense every muscle group, or one that is pretty effective with kids because it's easy. It's we kind of simplify it to tin soldier, ragdoll,
that's good.
ragdoll, and just kind of getting them to tense as many muscles as they can and hold that, and then release.
Yes.
Because that's again working with our sympathetic nervous system to try and activate our calming system.
Yeah, great. And then for the kids who aren't feeling distressed in my class, I just say to them, this is what stress feels like. Just feel it, feel it, feel it, and then you let it go and this is relaxed. And it just kind of gives them a little bit of an experience of letting it go and feeling the difference between the two.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Okay, the second thing we're going to talk about today is emotion regulation. So where do you want to start with this?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of touch on the fact that emotions are really important. So emotions give us information. So they're often giving us information about ourselves. They might be giving us information about something that's dangerous, or sometimes when we're talking about emotion regulation, we're talking about regulating emotions that maybe don't fit the situation. Someone might be really, really scared of something, but it's actually maybe not very likely that it's going to happen, or it might be something that we're worrying about but isn't, like when you lose sleep at night or something like that, and it's like, those nighttime thoughts that might get you in a bit of a spin, but in the daytime it's like, this is not a big a deal. And so we can sort of start to check the facts and see what's really going on. And the first thing we want to do is recognise what the emotion is that's showing up. Okay. And that can be the hardest part sometimes. Yeah,
I work with students and I'll say to them, how are you feeling? And they're like, I don't know. Yeah. So we don't actually have, fine. I love that. I don't love that word. But we just, as adults, and as someone who loves mindfulness and I love the psychology stuff, and I kind of like to pinpoint my emotion, but that's taken a long time. Yeah. And not everyone has it, which I'm discovering. So are there some things we can do to identify our emotions?
Yeah, so there are sometimes it can be really hard to figure out what we're feeling. So we can sometimes start with what's going on in our body. So if we're feeling a really overwhelming feeling, but we might be able to identify where it is. So it might be like, it's in my belly. It's in that feeling in my throat. Yeah, okay. Or it's this tension in my body. So sometimes if we can't identify the name of the feeling, we might be able to identify the things that are happening in our body. And even that can be helpful in terms of starting to find our way towards what our emotions are that are going on for us. We can kind of start to notice what function it's having as well. So one of my favourites is recognising the function of anger. Because I don't know about anyone else, but like we all sometimes will respond feeling angry about something. And I it was really powerful to me to recognise that anger was showing up when my needs were being blocked. So anger can show up for a few different reasons, but one really common one is when our needs are getting blocked. So we feel like this, something's not right, I'm not getting what I need, and it can be really subtle, so it's not so much, this idea that we have this need that needs to be met. So the example that I thought I'd share is that I used to was getting really cranky at bedtime because no one's going to sleep. It's like, come on guys, TikTok, and I could feel this frustration rising in me. And then I realised, well, it's actually, because I have a need to get the kitchen clean, to get myself showered and ready for bed, and actually get a decent sleep myself. So when everyone else was kind of like, it was all rolling on at this end, my frustration would rise. And when I could recognise the function of it, that it had a function because I was it was getting in the way of what, some really practical needs for me. It made me go, oh, there's that frustration showing up again. And it became less of a big deal because I could let it go. I knew where it was coming from. I could even articulate to the kids, hey guys, I actually need to get to bed too. So it kind of could help me sort of with that process of coping with that emotion.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
the skill that I was talking to you about earlier, Belinda, was checking the facts. So I think this is a really helpful one to share with particularly our teenagers. But
because emotions aren't always real. They're not always true. They're real. They're not always true. They're not always built on truth.
That's exactly it, Belinda. Yeah.
Just body's responding without so much the brain connection. Is that?
Yeah, and that's particularly true in adolescence because our brains are wiring a bit differently. There's a bit of different, processing going on in our frontal lobe. So yes, it's definitely true. Our emotions are a response to something, but then sometimes they're not going to be proportionate or maybe not actually accurate.
Okay.
So when with teenagers, if we think something's going on in our friend group and we feel a sense of rejection or hurt, but what we thought, like if we went and said what's happening, and it wasn't actually what we thought, but we might have already experienced that emotion, and if we act on that emotion without knowing all the details, it can sometimes not go well for us.
Yeah. And you also don't know what's going on with other people.
That's exactly it.
I had an incident where I got really upset about something and someone got upset at me back. And then we had a bit of time to think about it and we bravely met and chatted, and I said, this was actually in the lead up to that moment. And they went, oh, well, this was in the lead up to that moment. So we met with emotion.
Yeah.
But then we responded to each other's emotion. And it was all just a mess. But it was just like, it must happen to teenagers all the time. Well, I watch it happening all the time.
To us all, yeah, definitely, because we come into any given moment with our own life behind it.
And we all just carry our junk.
That's a perfect example, Belinda. Yeah, that's because then if we decide not to spend time with that friend anymore based on what had transacted, but if we can check in ourselves, and we then we might go, oh, everything's actually fine.
Yeah, it can actually, in that instance, it actually made the friendship better because we were both very aware that we've come from different places and we can actually check in a bit deeper. Yeah. So, difficult. It was messy for a little while, but then it was much better.
Yeah. So in the moment, if it's big, we can actually kind of ask ourselves, is this my interpretation that's creating this emotion, or is it the situation that's creating the emotion? And oftentimes it's how we're interpreting the situation. Yeah. So it's not always even about that really checking the facts, like going up to someone and going, hey, what did you mean, or what happened? It can even just be about us checking, am I jumping to a conclusion? Am I assuming something about this other person? Yeah. And that in itself, when we do that, can quite often change how we're feeling in our emotions and can help us to regulate our emotions and bring kind of the intensity down.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then you just brought up the word regulation. Yeah. When I've done research about this, and this is, it makes my heart sink, because one tip on how to get better at emotional regulation is to have good modelling.
which means if I want my kids to have better emotional regulation, I have to be able to do mine.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about parenting that I've learned so much, is that if I want to see something in my child, I actually have to do it.
Yeah.
So I have a child who never puts her shoes away.
Not mentioning any names.
But then there's also an adult in the house, me, who never puts my shoes away. And that's a tiny example, but we have to be modelling what we want to see in our kids. And that's hard, but it's also healing for us to learn how to regulate our emotions as adults. Good for us, good for our kids, good for our families.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's hard. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is validation. And this links in with emotion, right? Validation is about acknowledging other people's feelings and interpersonal relationships, which is family, so validation has a place in family.
Oh, absolutely. So validation really is a way that we can strengthen the relationships we have with the people who are important to us. We can, if we really validate and focus on the other person and really engage with them, it has a lot of benefits. Even when we are in distress or we have upset kids, if we can really be with them, you've probably heard about, just be with them in their emotions, and that can be sometimes hard to know what to do, but it can be as simple as looking someone in the eyes.
Yes.
So I have, don't tell my kids, but I have done some experiments when I actually stop. I might be cooking dinner, they might be chatting to me, but just stop and I just look them in the eye and I talk, and they will talk so much more when I do that.
That's so
because
good.
it's building that relationship, but it actually also soothes us. So when we're talking about that modelling, Belinda, and all those things, when we're trying to support our kids, if we can really be with them and be present when they're upset or angry or whatever the emotion is that they're feeling, being with them in that can actually help soothe their whole system as well. So
interesting.
It's a bit of a powerful one, and we live in an age where there are so many distractions, whether that's I'm on my phone and my kids are talking, and it's like, making that choice of either, hey, give me a sec while I finish this so I can give you my full attention, or putting that down and going, I am with you.
Yes.
With our body language, with our eye contact. And we can also validate in terms of how we speak with our family, children, whatever. We can actually reflect back, wow, that must be really hard. And that validation, just having someone see us and hear us is just so powerful. We, as adults, we know what that's like. If we ring a friend and they go, oh, well, you'll be right. That doesn't feel too good. But if we have a friend, we ring a friend and they go, oh, I can't believe you're going through this. That's so hard.
Yeah.
I can almost feel it when I give that example. You can almost feel that sensation that we're heard and we're seen and we're understood.
That's good.
And when we can communicate to others that they're seen and they're heard and they're understood, we can really build stronger relationships and change the kind of, I guess, the tone sometimes of what's going on for us emotionally.
That's really good. We could also validate ourselves, right?
Yes.
This is not going to be easy,
No.
but tell me all about it.
So we're just using the same process, but doing it for ourselves. So that might be, if we, parenting can be such a hard gig. If we feel like we have failed as a parent, or we feel like things really stink, it can just be saying to ourselves, based on everything that's been happening, all the past, how you grew up, it makes sense that you responded that way. And it's okay. And you're going to be okay. We can even do things like, this probably comes more under something like our distress tolerance skills, where we're physically doing something to soothe ourselves. But we can even give ourselves that bear hug, because when we can communicate to ourselves that we're okay, that we make sense. And so sometimes I like to think of it as looking for ways that I make sense in the world right now.
Great.
So, and that can help us to not excuse things that maybe aren't perfect, but it can help us to be compassionate to ourselves.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And it's hard.
It is, yeah.
I remember being really challenged by the verse in the Bible about love your neighbour as yourself. And I think, okay, I can really love my neighbours. I love helping people. I love chatting. But that little verse, the second part is as yourself. So if I can't actually love myself, I can't actually love my neighbours properly.
Yeah.
And the way I talk to myself is not always healthy.
Yeah.
And so learning to actually accept who I am and build myself up is actually super important.
Yeah, yeah. And this doesn't sit under a DBT skill, but some of the easy ways you can start to learn to do that are just even journaling, writing down what are the things I did well today?
Yeah.
What are, or even just thinking about at the end of the day, what are 3 things I did well today?
Yeah, great.
Or in terms of actual DBT skills, it's all coming back to that mindfulness as well. So choosing those mindfulnesses of self-compassion and, just validating ourselves in that way as well.
That's great. Thank you for coming on today.
It's my pleasure.
It's been great. It's taken us a while to get here, but I'm really pleased that you came in. And I hope that it's helped our families. I hope that it helps you. I hope that we can all learn to regulate emotions, work out how to get through some distressful times and how to look after ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Belinda. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have any questions you would like us to answer on the podcast, we have an email address. You can email us at morethanok@highlands.qld.edu.au. We would love to hear any questions, and I love researching things, so hit me up with any questions you have about family, parenting, teenagers, children, anything really. Thanks for coming, and we look forward to more episodes in the future.